First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the 2023 State of the City. And I would like to apologize to everyone on my left-hand side for that sun that's in your eyes right now, but we still welcome that sun every day. My name is Steve Kimmel, and I am the Executive Director here at the Huntington County Chamber of Commerce. And each year we do invite the mayor to come in and give a State of the City of where the city has been over the last year and maybe what they're looking at over the coming year. We're going to be, I think the mayor will be touching upon some of the projects that they've worked on, some of the projects that they will be working on, some of the wins, and some of the challenges. So at this time, what I would like to do is welcome Mayor Richard Strick to the podium.
Speaking of Sunday mornings, we always used to joke, you should wait until after, whether or not there's something worth applauding for. There's not really titles normally with a State of the City, but if there was a title for this one, and it would be befitting for today's weather, it would be something to the effect of make hay while the sun is shining, because that's what the city of Huntington has been doing over the last year here. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out so we can have an update on the state of our city. And many of you are engaged in the projects I'm going to talk about today. Many of you have projects that we're not going to cover because we don't have enough time to cover all of the great things that are happening in our city. It's an exciting era to be a part of. And so with that, I want to recognize that no one ever steps in the same river twice. And it's a concept first attributed to Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher. Our city continues to grow and improve as residents and colleagues invest in launching new beginnings and restoring Huntington classics. The reinvestments and redevelopment in downtown storefronts, to me, is as exciting as the new investments in development along US 24, in the north and south shopping plazas of our community, and our new industrial park. We work best when we work together to solve the problems facing us. We work best when we focus on results instead of credit, and we work best when we continue to pioneer and improve the way that we live together and serve one another. Now, for me personally, I am grateful to serve as the head of a team of leaders that continues to grow in their effectiveness as public servants. Our city employees continue to evaluate and improve our services in 2022, and so here are a few highlights and accomplishments from each department throughout the year. Chief Tony Johnson and our firefighters responded to 1,543 calls in 2022, an average of 4 per calendar day. 75% of those are medical runs. The H.K. Porter arson fire last April was the largest fire, most intense fire that our team responded to. But for most of us, the most heartbreaking fire for the general public was probably at Pizza Junction last May. And while I'm grateful that no one was injured in either situation, like many of you, I'm extremely excited to know that Pizza Junction is on track to reopen later this spring or summer. Global supply chain and production challenges have forced us to start planning further out for larger equipment. We're looking ahead to budget cycles 2 times out to place an order for our next fire engine. Huntington's fire department remains in the top 6% statewide for our public protection certification, and they continue to work to improve that even further. Now, that scoring is made up of 3 different components. The first component is our firefighters, their training and their equipment. The second component is our water infrastructure as a community. And the third component is our communication through combined dispatch with Huntington County. Now, Chief Corey Boxell and his leadership team at the police department have accomplished a great deal in the first full calendar year of his tenure. The new and improved DARE program was implemented throughout our school corporation. Continuing training hours increased 31% last year, and Huntington officers are training on average at 3 times the statewide minimum requirement for officers. Additionally, several major bureaucratic achievements were accomplished this past year. A revised school resource officer memorandum of understanding with the school corporation, an overhaul and revision to personnel policies to resolve several long-standing scheduling issues that were dragging down morale, successful application and receipt of federal grant monies for crisis intervention training in a countywide collaboration, successful acquisition of new radios and an additional countywide collaboration, investments in new technology and procedures that keep officers up to date on case law, providing better documentation to strengthen case reports, which ultimately improves our effectiveness to allow our prosecutors to successfully bring cases to court. I'm also thankful to work with a city council that agrees with me on the importance of investing in equipment and training to make sure that our first responders perform their duties with integrity and return home safely at the end of their shift. Now, our Department of Public Works and Engineering Services worked extremely hard this past year to keep major projects in both the public and private sector on schedule. Director Adam Cuttress oversaw the bidding of projects 7, 8, and 9 of the long-term control plan, with work beginning this year on those projects. This is a big deal for our community. That's a shadow that's been hanging over us for the last several decades, and so for us to be able to finally knock out those 3 projects is huge for us. It's a great thing to celebrate this year. The Frontage Road project, initiated under the previous administration to provide better pedestrian access north of US 24, was largely completed in 2022. We initiated a $3.3 million phase of infrastructure improvements for the new industrial park in 2022, with its first phase completed later this year. Once-in-a-generation infrastructure projects are stressful and costly. I appreciate the understanding and the patience of the members of the public that these projects affected over the past year, and we know that projects this year will impact us as well. As with every task, debriefing the work afterward helps us learn lessons to improve our service to the community. And the department also oversaw paving of just under 4 miles of city streets and 1¼ miles of Nally Road. Director Bryn Keplinger and the team in community development and redevelopment continued to see strong growth throughout the city, as indicated by a 20% increase in plan commission applications and a 56% increase in development plan applications. Those increases are by volume, not dollars. The value of permitted construction projects in 2022 was around $58.7 million, a 68% increase from 2021. 37 new single-family homes were permitted in 2022, which is an increase of 54% over previous year. While these numbers are impressive, residential housing options that hourly workers can afford remains a need within our community and a focus for the remainder of my term. We are proud to receive regional approval for ready grant dollars to redevelop 2 of our classic buildings downtown, but much work remains on that to bring that project online. In addition to city-led projects, the Public Works Department, the Department of Development and Redevelopment played supporting roles in several notable construction projects throughout the city in 2022. A $550,000 remodel of the Victory Knoll Center by the county to create the O'Donnell Center. A $1.6 million remodel of Ecolab's facilities on Tipton Street. A $1.7 million Planet Fitness remodel. A $3.5 million Shuttleworth expansion. A $20.5 million construction project for Tasian's new plant at River Fork West, which anticipates an additional $80 million in equipment and other expenditures and an over $100 million investment in the new industrial park. A $14.8 million Plex project at Huntington University, which will allow them to host NAIA pods for the basketball season, so we'll be able to bring March Madness home. $554,000 remodel project at Central Christian Church. The expansion at the Huntington County Jail. Huntington North's Athletic Stadium project. Construction of Section 5 in Carlisle Crossing and Section 8B of Indiana Ridge on the Wabash for those residential units I was talking about. Gerdau Steel's laydown yard and additional retail projects in Walmart outlots and throughout the city. Street Superintendent Tim Bischoff and his team in city services are responsible for Huntington's 95 miles of streets and 25 miles of paved alleys. And our community owes our street department a great deal of thanks for coming in at odd hours to ensure our streets remain clear, and particularly for the good weather we've enjoyed to date. Street employees also were responsible for 4.5 miles of crack sealing and preventative maintenance on our roads. Additionally, the team manages our contracts for trash and recycling collection, along with the orange sticker and brown bag programs. Now in 2022, that was the last year of our previous trash and recycling contracts and required a full bidding process. After reviewing 3 proposals, the bid was awarded to Green for Life, GFL. The efficiencies gained in combining the contracts allowed us to keep costs nearly level at the start of our new contract, despite global inflation pressures. That's a big deal. We understand that it's been a challenging and eye-opening transition, I think, for all of us, and it's revealed several shortcomings by previous haulers related to transparency and contract fulfillment, and several gaps in communication for us with the public. We are working diligently to address those outstanding concerns and help the public achieve the smooth and predictable service that GFL provides its customers and other communities. City Utilities Distribution Superintendent Chad Hacker is a familiar face that I'm glad to welcome back to the city's workforce. His top priority for his department was improving morale and filling several openings, and he delivered on that this past year. He and his team worked closely with both the street and engineering departments to continue improving the city's water and wastewater distribution systems. An outside contract with M.E. Simpson surveyed 19 miles of water main, identifying several leaks that our team repaired along the way. To give you a sense of what that means, 2 of those leaks alone were costing the city $12,550 annually in water losses. So taking care of projects like that leads to better efficiencies, and that proactive maintenance of leaks and testing meters throughout the city ensures accurate revenues, which lessens pressure on utility rates despite the world we live in. F&V Operations continues to provide excellent service managing the city's water and wastewater treatment facilities, and while the city maintains ownership of those assets, F&V ensures full compliance with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management regulations and handles routine maintenance and capital projects of those facilities. As reflected by the opening quote, federal, state, and local regulations are ever evolving as we learn more through the scientific process. Ultimately, what works and what doesn't. Sometimes this results in increased expenditures. Sometimes it leads us to better budget efficiencies. Even something as simple as expanding the protected radius around wellheads leads to increased expenses, seeking appraisals, negotiating with landowners, and executing new agreements. This is ultimately what drove the city to close our landfill operations and cap the existing cells. Parks and Recreation Superintendent Steve Yoder works with his team to maintain and enhance our city's 186 acres of public parks. In addition to our health and enjoyment and recreation, several of these parks also help us to manage the water from intense rain events. Our forefathers and foremothers knew a thing or two when they were placing those around the city. Meanwhile, Megan Thompson continues to create new and innovative programming to engage people of all ages and help them enjoy our parks. Thousands of people are using the pickleball courts annually and our disc golf courses, including people coming in from as far away as North Carolina because they heard about this disc course. Over 500 people enjoyed the pump track last year. We saw 858 attendees at the daddy-daughter dances and mother-son extravaganza in 2022. The newly renovated splash pad enjoyed a full season, and 70 volunteers came out to plant trees in our new arboretum at Evergreen Park. And with the May hiring of a new volunteer coordinator, 2022 saw 1,989 service hours completed by 215 volunteers on 14 projects. That translates to about $60,000 in labor cost savings to get that work done. Local skaters continue to advance the skate park remodel in Yeoman Park. It's been fun working with them to dream and design what this might look like. We awarded the design contract last month to Hunger Skate Parks out of Bloomington, Indiana. We're looking forward to raising funds later this year to initiate that construction. With a second year under his belt, Communication Coordinator Kevin Crosskoff continued building on early successes and tackling long-standing communication challenges in our city and our modern media landscape. Communication is a two-way street though, and we'll need the help of residents utilizing the traditional and the new channels that we're establishing and helping others learn how to use those channels as well. The overhaul of the joint city-county website has gone live, and our local See-Click Fix app rolled out last summer. These are both tools to help us come into the 21st century in terms of being able to engage with the public and be notified of issues around the city. Meanwhile, enrollment with the city's newsletter and city social media pages continue to increase steadily each year. We also began partnering with Z103 local radio, who's recording us right now as we speak, to provide a weekly update by city and county officials and staff. And we're glad to work with Monty on that. After all, communication is foundational to trust. And ultimately, Kevin's efforts this past year were crucial to serving our workforce and our city so that we can work better together. Now, 2022 was a busy and productive year for our city despite inflationary headwinds. We also appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with leaders throughout the county to try and help households outside of the city address water and wastewater infrastructure needs. This administration remains committed to being a good neighbor when it makes financial sense for our current residents and ratepayers. As we work with local, state, and federal partners, we're hoping to resolve several long-standing regional issues with every party paying their fair share to accomplish the work together. It's been a pleasure to serve alongside of our city council members and Christy McElhaney, and while most of us will be facing re-election this year, we welcome the excitement of local municipal election cycles. Huntington has proven over these past 3 years that this work isn't about party affiliation. It's about setting personal egos aside to focus on solving problems that are facing our community. This includes applying attention and creativity to improve the efficiencies of city operations and the work environment so we can remain competitive in hiring and recruitment. And thanks to the leadership of Director of Operations Annette Carroll, This past year, we worked with the union in negotiations to implement the city's first parental leave policy for any city employee needing time to adjust to welcoming a new child into their home through birth or adoption. We will continue to take steps forward as a community. We'll continue to support one another through these challenges we face. As we enter 2023, we remain positioned to again make significant capital investments in infrastructure and equipment, while also providing a slight decrease in the city's tax rate due to increased assessments due to those investments we've all made. It's also our semi-sepcentennial. Say that 3 times fast. What that translates to is we've been here for 175 years and we're not going anywhere. 150 years of that has been as a city. And so this year we're going to have a year-long party celebrating all things Huntington. We kicked that off with a proclamation in January, and our February event is a dance on the 17th for high schoolers at the Courthouse Rotunda. Those of you paying attention to the calendar know that's just this Friday. And they're going to be in this space, and they're going to be in a tent on Franklin Street, and they're going to have a dance floor and a DJ in the Courthouse Rotunda. And we're glad to have the partnership from the Arts Center with the support of Board of Works on the closure of Franklin Street and our county commissioners to have that space over and showcase the renovations that have been going on there. We're also using this anniversary to help raise funds for our countywide addiction recovery fund at the Community Foundation. You've heard me talk before, and we all know from personal experience how many lives in our community have been harmed and hurt by addiction. And so we're partnering across Huntington County to establish 2 funds using the opioid settlement dollars that are coming down our way. One will be a pass-through fund that allows immediate use of funds for approved programs aligned with best recovery practices. The second is an endowed fund, which will establish a source of funding for years to come. This 1-2 punch for us reflects the reality that recovery is a marathon, not a sprint. And so we're establishing both endowed and pass-through accounts to fund the hard work of recovery in our community. Now, as we move into 2023, I recognize that I'm in the last year of the term granted me by the voters. And unlike basketball here, there is a shot clock. I intend to make the most of this time on behalf of our residents. My resolve remains to keep believing in and working for a better Huntington. As the second largest city in Northeast Indiana, I'm not content. We can and we will do better as we keep investing our lives in this community. And through the fall campaign, I hope to earn the privilege of serving in this role for another term as we keep delivering wins for our community together. If we're to ensure that we leave Huntington better to the next generation than we found it, it will take each of us playing our part. It'll take work, a form of bravery and courage to face our faults and fears, a commitment to truth and honor, a willingness to patiently stand firm and suffer hardships to bring about important achievements. For my part, I will remain focused on smart economic growth, increasing housing, strengthening the city's workforce, sustainable infrastructure projects, and making investments to retain families and young people while recruiting new talent to our community. And it's not always easy. I've struck out on a few attempts to bring a grocery store to the south side of Huntington, but I'm going to keep stepping into the batter's box because that's what we do. We're continuing to press the EPA to finish the work they committed to in cleaning up HK Porter, and are working to secure the resources necessary to finish that brownfield project. And once again, I reaffirm my annual promise to you. There will be bumps and bruises along the way. Anytime humans are involved, we can count on misunderstandings and failures to communicate, and it'll often be my fault for that. But we've also seen the benefits that come from practicing humility and graciousness in our discourse and our actions. And so I appreciate and thank you for joining me in that work, because our lives and our future depend on it. While the rest of the world seems to be riding a chaotic roller coaster, Huntington is still here, chugging along, putting in a day's work, because consistent progress is the truest measure of our performance. Thank you.